Welcome to Tea Talk, where athletes share their stories. Join us as we explore the profound connections between sports, community, and the human experience.
So I'm excited to have on Tea Talk today Miss Mashandra Jackson. Meshandra is a Hall of Famer from Tulane. She played two sports. She was a basketball player and a track athlete. In track, she set numerous school records and won conference in the long jump. She also qualified for the NCAAs in the long jump, and she was just an all around awesome person. So we're excited to have Mashandra on today. Welcome to Tea Talk, Mashandra.
Thank you, Carmen. It's awesome to see you, and I'm glad to be here as well.
Awesome, Mashandra. So we're just gonna jump right into it. The first thing I want to know is where did you grow up? What was it like being a child for Mashandra?
Well, I grew up in Memphis, but I'm actually from Dyersburg, Tennessee. It's about 80 miles north of Memphis, and my mom moved here when I was. So I
Okay.
grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. I was an only child for basically 12 years, and along came the love of my life, my little sister. Um, and I only got when I went to college, she was, and so that was super duper hard to leave and miss most of those milestones. But I was with my mom all the time and my dad, my stepdad, most of the time. I can't complain. I was a loner pretty much because I was an only child. I played board games to myself, and I started running
Okay,
track.
hold up. You play board games by yourself?
Oh yes, yes, ma'am. I had Life. That was my favorite game. Life. Oh, love that game. Life. I used to
So
play.
you're playing, sitting around playing life by yourself?
Yes, and when we would go every summer, I went back to Dyersburg, and so I hung out with my cousins, and I used to be there for a month. So that was awesome because we were all the same age. So I used to get to do that during the summer. But growing up, my mother made me do, she made me do ballet, guitar, piano, and gymnastics. Gymnastics was my favorite, and then I grew too tall because my
Right.
elementary school had a gymnastics program. And eventually, once I gave myself a black eye with my niece trying to do a back handspring, that was the end of that. And then it became too costly. But I started running track with my mom. She taught special ed, and I would go with her to their meets. And in
Okay.
one meet, when I was 9, I just remember them saying, "Hey, you can your child can run too." So I ran out of the lanes. I had no idea you're supposed to stay in the lanes. Eventually, I learned, and so I ended up doing something free after she paid for all those lessons. When we got to toe shoes for ballet, I quit that. I was like, no, Mom, I don't think I can do that. So here we are.
And how did your mom feel about you
She was
leaving
fine.
the other things behind?
She was fine. I think she just wanted to expose me to a lot of things, and then I really appreciate that she allowed me the opportunity to pick what I wanted to do. And my mother never pressured me to do. I mean, never pressured me to do anything. She let me do what I felt comfortable doing as long as she exposed me to everything. So she was an awesome, awesome mom, and I love her for that. She passed away in 22, January 20.
Oh, I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
So, your mom, she's amazing. She's putting you in all these different events. When did you really start feeling like, oh, I'm enjoying this track thing, I'm enjoying this basketball thing? When did you, start thinking about what you could do with those things?
So it pretty much started when I found out that I could not go to the middle where I entered the middle school. It's called Colonial Middle School. Doing a jazz dance because I did everything a jazz dance routine as my audition, and I got accepted. And on the first day of school, I decided since I got out before my mom, 7th grade, I was going to walk to her school so she wouldn't have to drive and come pick me up because I got out before. Long story short, when I got to her school, she was literally driving away. No cell phones then. She did not see me, and I still don't know to this day how we reconnected. But that was my last day at that, and so I had to go to the school around the corner from her job, and they of course had track. And I inquired about track in the 8th grade. I did not do anything in this. And in the 8th grade, I absolutely loved track, and she could pick me up from everything because we had snow back then. So I did play basketball in the 8th grade, but she made me quit because we had a really bad snowstorm, and she couldn't come and get me. And we all were stuck at school. It was a big to do here. in Memphis. But I started back playing basketball in the ninth grade. So I did both sports in the ninth grade. But my love was pretty much, I really loved both of them for a while, but my true love was track. Um, I just loved it. I love everything about the track. I love the way it smells. I love the heat. I love everything about track. And I enjoyed the competition in basketball. I enjoyed out jumping everyone and seeing if I could get the rebound. But pretty much in junior high is when my love for both sports, really ninth grade, eighth and ninth.
Okay, well, let's just kind of take a step back. You said you played basketball and you ran track, but you really didn't start until the eighth grade.
Yes,
I know you're an educator, I know you're around children a lot. What do
yes.
you think about the younger kids just playing one sport all year round, starting in at 6 and 7 years old? What's your take on that?
Well, actually, my take on it is if you're forced to do it, and if your parents are forced to make a decision because the coach says you can only do my sport, I believe that is absolutely positively unfair. I do think it burns children out. And I'm going to give an example. Most of the young people, my teammates who were from Houston, I had three of them from Houston, and they ran summer track, which means they ran year round. They were burned out from track when they got to. I did not. I never ever ran summer track, and my sister's an example of that as well. She ran AAU summer track, and she hated everything by the time she got to college. And so, if you're not exposed, you don't know if you're excellent at more than one sport. So why limit what you're able to do? Look at Jordan; he could play baseball also. So he wasn't always basketball, basketball, basketball. But look what happened. So I kind of think it's unfair for coaches to say you can't do another sport. If the kid only wants to do one sport, that's fine. I don't think your parents or the coaches should make you do it year round because, in my opinion, and I see everyone's always trying to be the best, children stop enjoying it. So if you stop enjoying it, you shouldn't do it. And that's actually happening to me now with some of my athletes. I coach high school track, and at the end of track practice, they're required to go to basketball practice daily, and basketball season is over, and so they're exhausted, which ends up meaning they give one sport more attention than the other, and I think that's a problem, and it's unfair to the child. But that's happening more and more. Um, and I saw it up close and personal. I was married to a basketball coach who also coached AAU, and it was year round, all the time, eat, sleep, and breathe basketball. And it just doesn't give you a chance to find out, what you're good at or what you like, even if you're not trying to pursue it beyond high school or even beyond college.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. My take is, some people are athletes and they can play multiple sports. Some people can are, they can on their ceiling is so high and they're only going to get so much out of it.
Right.
And like you're saying, I never played in the summer either. I did sport to sport. I never played year round because I consider myself a basketball player and an athlete. So I
Right.
did volleyball during volleyball season. I did basketball during basketball season, and I ran track during track season. Now, I would venture to say, because I never did a preseason in track,
Hmm.
I would venture to say that had I been able to kind of focus and do a preseason with track,
Hmm.
that, I would have been even better at track,
Hmm.
which I was good, but I think I would have been even better if I had that preseason.
Hmm.
However, year round, I think rest and recovery is very important to
Yes.
athletes. And I think that's the part they're missing out on.
Yep.
And then that wear and tear on the body, now you have more knee injuries, knee
Yes.
surgeries, all these other injuries that, I mean, I never got hurt. I played
Yep.
every game,
Yep.
almost the whole game. I never got hurt. Not saying that, it couldn't have happened. I'm just saying it wasn't a common thing for there to be no one else on my team had a knee injury. No
Right.
one else, but now that stuff is so common. There's something going on that makes that situation pop up. In my opinion, I think.
I didn't think about that, but you're absolutely correct that as I think back. I don't recall very many injuries. And in high school, there were about 12 of us, and my good friend Cassandra Howell, who we went to junior high, high school, and to
Oh, wow.
um, we did. There were 12 of us, and there were two coaches. We did volleyball, basketball, and cross country with two coaches. And the way they set it up so that it was fair was ran if you ran cross country and you wanted to play, well, if you wanted to play basketball, you had to run cross country, and if you wanted to play run track, you had to play volleyball. So all of us did four sports, and I can honestly say, of the 12 of us, over a period of 2 years, 9 of us got scholarships to college in some way, shape, or form. And we built a camaraderie, and we loved each other. We still communicate to this day. And no one, as you just said, had a major injury. And I do agree, not in high school, but on the collegiate level, I really believe that had I honed in on one sport, track in particular, that I would have gone further because it's a different of running than basketball. But hey, that's how I got to college, so I can't knock
You did great. You did great.
it. Thank you, thank you.
Okay, so now we're in high school. What were some of the awards and recognitions that you received in high school? When did you start realizing that, yeah, I can do this in college? I think I can go to the next level.
Probably. Well, I always knew in junior high that I wanted a scholarship to college for one reason only, and that's because I did not want my mother to have to pay for it. Because I watched everything she did, and I said, well, I don't want my mom to have to pay, even so much that she asked me which high school I wanted to go to after junior high. I went to a school called Wooddale Junior High. Well, Wooddale had a high school, and so I told my mom it's easier to get a scholarship if you've been consistent and at the same school. So I said I want to go to Wooddale High, and I thought about your grades, and I don't know where these thoughts came from. My mother never sat down with me and said, "We you're going to college, or what do you think about college?" She went, so I didn't want her to pay for it, and I figured this is the next step. This is what you have to do. And I just don't know how I knew that. Hey, no one told me that if you go to the same school, it seems more consistent, and you think about academically where you will be ranked at that school and all of that. But I West Point Military Academy had a prep school, and they started sending me mail in the 10th grade. And when we were in school, there was junior high, seventh, eighth, ninth, and in high school, 10 through 12, which has changed now. And of course, my mother was not going to let me go to the prep school, but they literally were the first school that started recruiting me, and I was going to West Point. I signed a track and field scholarship to go to West Point,
Okay.
and I remember my liaison came down several times, and he asked me, "Well, how do you um, compartmentalize everything?" Because I was ranked seventh out of 250. Yes, I was on honor society. I was class president, 10th, 11th, 12th, and my favorite subjects were English and science. I didn't like math, and I wanted to go into engineering. And I knew West Point had a great engineering program. Well, I watched a movie called Women in West Point that was made in the 1970s, literally after I signed to go with them for track. And I changed my mind. I said, "Oh my God, I don't want to go to West Point." And I asked him, would I be required to do everything that the regular cadets do, like getting up, to the call at 5? And he was like, "Yes." And so I was like, no, I don't want. I mean, West Point's awesome. I said, but I'm scared. I don't want to go to West Point. But in high school, I was a female athlete of the year in 10th grade, 12th grade. I don't remember 11th grade. And I was track and field MVP 10th, 11th, and 12th. If not 10th, 11th, 12th, I think it was just 11th and 12th. But one of my most coveted awards for me my senior year was not related to athletics. It was called the Freedom Heritage Writing Award. And
Okay.
I won that senior year, which I didn't know, after a basketball game where we lost and it was our final game. And I never missed school. I had perfect attendance in 10th and 11th, not 12th. But I missed a day after a game. I did not go to school. And my 12th grade AP English teacher, Miss Stansberry, said, "Where were you? You won the Freedom Heritage Writing Award, and someone else had to read your speech." Well, they were keeping it a secret, so that's why I wasn't there. And so that was probably my favorite award because it was about the freedom and freedom of speech. It's what I
And what
won.
what were you talking about in that
Um,
essay?
I was talking about, the freedom to be able to choose what you want to do, the freedom to be able to speak. And of course, race came into it because I went to the only junior high and high school in the city of Memphis that was 50-50 African American and Caucasian. Perhaps we had a couple of Asian kids, but that's all I remember. And so it was very a well-rounded school. And I wish everyone had that same experience in school. It just doesn't happen like that now. But I recall speaking about that, and I can't remember what else. I just remember having to stay up till midnight and type it up with the typewriter, back then.
Right.
And yeah, and I don't remember a lot from it. I remember writing from third person and then saying oneself a lot in it. But again, everything in there was something from my own experience, and then putting my sources for things that were relative to it, using my great Britannica encyclopedias at that time.
That was before Google and this foolishness.
Yes, yes, yes,
Yes,
yes,
we actually had to use real periodicals and journals that
yes,
had
yes.
actual facts.
Mm-hmm. So I
That's
just remember that.
awesome. That's awesome. So when did Tulane step into the picture?
Tulane stepped in um, a little bit before spring of my junior year. And I did not know. My mother was not an athlete. No one in my family was. Real. They may have done something, but I don't recall in high school. But no one was, being approached by colleges. So I did not know what the process was at all. I did not know that you're supposed to tell your coach when you make a decision. Hey, I didn't know any of that. And so I was speaking to West Point, and like I said, and I signed to go to West Point. And then Tulane came spring of senior year, maybe, well, a little bit before spring. And I recall our basketball coach coming to get us out of class. And it was not our regular coach. Our coach for 10th and 11th grade got a job at USM. So our assistant coach became the head coach just for our senior year. And I recall Cassandra and I both had to go to the gym. However, on the walk down to the gym, because I know basketball season was over, I truly thought we were going to go run. That is exactly what I thought. And once we got down there, when we went to the gym, then I realized, oh, she's looking at us for basketball. So Cassandra and I had to play 1-on-1 for a little while, and then we were told later, that same day, Coach Matsunami told us that she was interested in signing both of us, but that she would not sign one without the other. Mind you, I still was signed with West Point, and so I did not. And again, I still didn't know the process. And so because I knew I didn't want to go to Middle Tennessee State for just the long jump, they recruited me for the long jump, and Tennessee State University for, I think it was basketball. And I just picked Tulane, and I didn't know I was supposed to tell my coach, and it was in the paper. And Cassandra picked it, and my coach was upset that it was in the paper before he knew, because I had no idea what the process.
Wow.
So I went on. We went
You
on
didn't
our
have
trip.
to tell him.
I didn't. I didn't. I just know because it was my decision.
Right.
And my mother absolutely positively let me make my own decision. And I just recall we went on a recruiting trip, which was awesome. And Cassandra and I went on the trip at the same time. And of course, I made my decision after came back from the trip. Funny story.
So what did
Sharon,
y'all do on your trip?
oh my God. We said, first of all, we thought we were going to die from the heat because global warming wasn't as talked about. So it was
Didn't
much
we have
hotter.
like a picnic or something when y'all were there?
You may have, but I promise you, we were in a daze because that's when all the portables were up and they were building the Wilson building. It wasn't finished, and we had to speak to Sharon Orr. And I recall Cassandra and I were in a daze because we had walked to the front of the campus on St. Charles, and then walked all the way to the back near Claiborne to the portables. And I recall us sitting there in a daze because we were exhausted. And she sent us, funny story, to the front of the campus to find the A-Bear building. So we walked and walked and walked and walked. And we were tired because we walked to Ferret and then back to the front we found Norman Mayer, but we were looking for the A-Bear. So we walked all the way to the back, and she asked us, did we find it? And we were like, no, we could not find the A-Bear building. And she said it's there, and we told her the building we saw. We said we saw a building called Herbert, and she said that's the A-Bear building. And so we said, oh well, we're from Memphis. That's Herbert in Memphis. But okay, it was A there in French. So, we found it. We just didn't know we found it. And that is a story I still tell my students to this day about all the French names I learned, and that you can't tell me that that street is Burgundy. That's Burgundy. In Memphis, that word is Burgundy. That's a color. So I remember that. And she talked about that we would have a tutor because I was in engineering. Also, I selected Tulane because at the time they had their engineering program was seventh in the nation.
Yeah.
And during my junior year of high school, I went to Christian Brothers University in the summer in an engineering program. But they were in the field already. So we were building spaghetti molds that could hold a 5-pound weight, figuring out how to design the average car seat in a car. So you weren't taking weeder courses. And I found out at Tulane that's what ultimately ended up happening. But that's what we talked to Sharon Orr about. Traveling, the fact that our classes would be recorded when we were not there, um, and basically just keeping up academically and going to study hall as a freshman. That was pretty much it, as what we talked about there. We didn't talk about athletics at all when I was there for our trip. That sat well with me too. I was like, I don't want to just talk about athletics. I want to know academically what's going on and how the campus was laid out. But I picked Tulane. And ironically, the head track and field coach at West Point, Ron Basil, became the head coach at Tulane the year after I graduated. And he
Wow.
told me, "You're going to." He used to tell my husband at the time, my ex-husband now, that you're going to take my place when I leave. I want you to coach here. But I didn't know that there was a drastic difference in pay for my age, basically, and my experience versus going into education. So, and I was married to a coach, so that would have been opposite seasons. Never would see each other. So I said, "Well, no, I'll coach part time," and I did ended up coaching at Tulane the year after I graduated.
Okay.
Printers. And
Awesome. So, you got the basketball scholarship,
hmm
but you knew you were going to be running track, right?
yes, I
Did,
asked on my
did you
recruiting.
talk to Coach Thiel? When did you talk to Coach Thiel?
Um, I think I met Coach Steele on my recruiting trip, if I remember correctly. I think I did. I recall. And oh my God, I love Coach Steele. I recall meeting him on my recruiting trip because I did ask the question before I even signed, will I be allowed to run track also? And she said yes. She said she encouraged that, which made me feel great. The basketball coach would encourage you doing both sports because why wouldn't you? That means you're in shape off season and your coach doesn't have to do much because you're with another coach. But yes, I think I recall meeting him on my recruiting trip. Oh my God, which was very comfortable. Um, just a different type of running, if I remember correctly. But I liken Coach Steele to a second father. I really do. Love the man. Awesome person.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
He really is. And I don't think he knows how great he is having started the actual program there with his retirement money, early 70s. And then that the track was named after him. And I was in protest of Yeoman Stadium for a while because they pulled up the track
Right.
to put in. So when I visited I do remember now meeting him on because when I saw the track, I'd never seen a blue track. We had lots of tracks in Memphis, but they were all black tracks. And I
They were
said, "Oh
black?
my God, it looks like a big blue swimming pool," and I couldn't wait to get on that track.
Yeah, it was nice. It was
It
nice.
was. It was. So,
All right. So you're on campus finally. What were your first impressions when you came to actually go to school?
um, it seemed like on the surface that it was going to be similar to high school, like the environment, that I was coming from. But there were a lot of things that were unexpected, like how much walking you have to do. And what really was surprising was I never thought about what time basketball practice would be. And we registered for our classes, and then we found out because we had like a 10 o'clock calculus class or 11 o'clock. And then Coach Matsunami said, "Hey, basketball practice is from 11 to 2 or 11 to 1. I don't remember." And so we had to change our calc, and we went from an 11 o'clock calculus class to an 8 o'clock after running in the park every morning at 5:30 before it got hot. All the people laughing at me because I used to wear my socks pulled all the way up to my knees. Because I had a heart condition, and it makes I didn't know it at the time, but it makes you hard for oxygen extremities. So we used to come back to the room and we were exhausted because you really need. We probably should have gone early to school, like in the summer, to get adjusted to the humidity that will rob you of your sensibility in the morning. So that, and I just remember being exhausted, not tired. I was always exhausted basketball practice, and so adjusting our schedule. And after that, and practicing for 3 hours, running in the morning, going to class, then going to practice, then going to eat, and we didn't have any classes after that. After eating, so it was difficult. It was difficult initially, and Cassandra and I used to trade crying every other Friday. One of us was crying to go home. It's just that we never did it at the same time, but we used to cry and say, "I want to go home," and we never did. And I don't even know. I think maybe once I told my mom I wanted to come home, and I think she said to me, "Well, if you really want to come home," no, that wasn't until sophomore year. I don't think she really entertained me saying I wanted to come home. I think she probably told me it'll go away or just try to console me. But we never actually made a plan to go home. We just cried and got over it. But yeah.
That's funny. So, when you walked into the gym, what was it like your first day at practice with the team, looking around, feeling out your place on the team?
Walking into practice, I remember the gym was very dark because they were in the process. We my freshman year was the year that quote hoops were back, so basketball was a big deal. Fall of '89, and I recall there were some things being painted, and I remember when I saw the gym on my recruiting trip, the shot clock that's in the center, it was on the floor. They were redoing it or whatever, and so the floor wasn't done. But when I got there, but my biggest shock was that there was no air in the gym when we first got there. Um, and so I was like, okay, there's no air. But then you always think about, I'm not paying for anything, and I got to get this degree. So that just kept staying. Then I remember my first day of practice with the team, learning about like our practice shirts, and we had a little bag where you put your practice gear and take it to Mike. So the way my first day at the end of practice went was one of the teammates, who will remain nameless. I think the teammate was maybe a sophomore. Walked over, and Cassandra and I were like freaking frat. Everyone thought we were twins,
Right.
although we didn't look alike and she was a little bit taller than me, but we did have the kind of the same body type, but we arrived together. Cassandra Mashandra, Mashandra Hall, Cassandra Howell. And we were like, we have different last names, we're not twins. But anyway, um, and we look different. I'm like a couple shades, a little bit more melanin than she does. But we were standing there, and I recall this teammate walking over and giving us a bag, no words beyond before that, and dropped the practice netting or jerseys in front of us and said, "Here, you're freshmen. Our freshmen have to watch the practice." And so I looked down at the jerseys and I said, "Well, this is a new year because we are not washing these practice jerseys." And so, I think she may have said you have to, and the conversation was over because they were still there, and we didn't watch. I'm not watching this. So that was. I don't know if that tradition came back after we left, but it
I
didn't.
don't know that tradition either.
So I was like, no, we won't be washing these practice jerseys, and that was the end of that. We never got approached to wash anything or anything else like that. I guess everybody washed their own, or they took it to the back to
Right.
give it to Mike. It was like, no, you lost your mind. Sorry. Because I can say that I was going to college to be a patent law attorney, after that, after you get your engineering degree and then go to law school, because I knew they had one scholarship for one athlete to go to Tulane Law School. They only had one. That was between There's not one per male female, it was one period. And so that was my initial plan. And I just recall always protesting and speaking my mind about something that was not right. Even from high school, I remember doing that. Like telling my mom they did this to this student, this young lady who was on the honor society, and they said she was pregnant and the other people wanted her off. Well, how did they know anybody up there could be pregnant? But what does that have to do with your mind? And it didn't say anywhere in the bylaws, but I made it a big deal, and my mother helped me make it a big deal as well, but she didn't make it a big deal, and her mom, and she allowed them to not allow her to be on the honors. And so I just recall, I didn't, oh, let me say this. When you first go, your parents have to write a letter about you, an essay
Okay.
rather about you. I didn't know that until, I think I didn't find that out until senior year or when I graduated. I think I graduated, and my mom told me because she never told me that before, and she had the letter. And in that letter, and you know what, Carmen, it was years after that I found out she wrote it, and she read it to me, and I realized that, oh my God, my mom really does know me because
Of course she does.
she said Mashandra is very easy to get along with as long as she is treated fairly. And it dawned on me, I was like, oh my God, my mom knew if I wasn't treated fairly, I was gonna be protesting and marching about it. And I
Right.
didn't realize how much that's just in me. Like, even if it's not me, they told you what? Well, that's not fair. You need to do A, B, C, and D, and talk to this person or that
So
person.
we got along real good then.
Yes, because I was like, no. Just like when I found out that I should have more meals, it didn't dawn on me. 14 meal plan means 2 meals a day, 7 days a week. I didn't do the math and found that out. It became 3 meals a day.
Exactly. Exactly.
So that was awesome. Eventually, that was a
Yes.
fight.
Yeah, lots of fighting going on. You had to
Hmm.
fight. What were some of the things that you noticed maybe around campus that made you kind of step up and want to talk about it and bring to their attention? What are some of the things you recall?
Well, I do recall was it my my sophomore year. Well, no, my freshman. Cassandra and I were taking a test for, I guess it was calculus. I don't remember the class. I know it was math, and we were in a very very small room where the desks were in a semicircle, but they were permanent, and they were stairs, 3 rows, and I recall Cassandra sat next to me, and there was a young lady on the right who was on the volleyball team that sat next on my right. So we all three were sitting together, and then on either end of us there were several seats, and then more people in front of us. There were about 8 people sitting shoulder to shoulder, and I recall the TA, not the professor. There was a Japanese TA, and before we started testing, he told Cassandra. He couldn't say our names or anything. He just told her to move down from me as best he could because he didn't speak. He spoke broken English. He told her to move away from me over one, and she got up and she moved. But I had a problem because I looked in front of me, and of course I said, "Well, what about them? All the people who were." He didn't ask Shelly to move over from me, but what about all the people who were in front? And we were the only 2 African Americans in the class. We were the only 2 African Americans in most of our classes.
Right.
But looked down front, and I was like, "What about them?" And I remember this handsome young man on the tennis team from London. His name escapes me, and he looked back and he said, "You're right." And the TA threw his hands up in, I don't know, in wonder, I don't know, but he started speaking Japanese and he never addressed it. So of course after that, I went to go visit. I think his name was Ron Mason, the school's attorney, and I explained that he moved us away from each other, and I didn't know that we could have refused to have taken the test at that moment because we were under duress, basically taking it after that, because that's the only thing I was thinking about. And we took it anyway. And then we would see, I saw rebel flags all the time. I saw swastikas sometimes. But that's some of the things I remember. I don't recall people on campus, like in passing and speaking to you. Everyone was awesome. But then there would be people who were afar. I mean, I don't know the people. They would have signs up, you know. And then I remember freshman year, everyone made a big deal that David spoke on campus. However, so did Spike Lee and Jesse. So I was like, okay, that was a trade off to that. But those are just some of the things freshman year that I remember. I remember thinking that basketball was difficult. I remember getting up at 5 or 6 to go run, but at night our hallmates would, well, we had a suite, so our suite mates sometimes and hallmates would have, they'd be up to 11, 12, 1. And so, being the freshmen we would turn up some music because I didn't start listening to rap music until freshman year. Cassandra had a lot of it. I didn't know about it that much, and because her sister listened, so we would turn up the rap music and leave, and just leave it blasting. And we would have notes on our doors: "Your music is up, and you're not even." So eventually, I guess we came to some compromise that, okay, well, you guys can't do this at 11 and 12 because we have to go to sleep, and so we stopped doing it. Everyone bought into it, and it was all settled. We'll be fair. That was freshman year. I remember that. I do, and we lived in Monroe on the 20th
Okay.
floor, and it had 21 floors. for those infamous fire drills at
Oh my
4-9.
gosh, was that insane?
It was.
Oh
Yes, it
my
was.
gosh.
Beautiful,
They
beautiful view of the city, though. Mhm.
That was crazy. I stayed my freshman year. I stayed in Sharp, and they pulled those doggone fire alarms all the time.
At least you were in sharp. We had to go down 20 flights of steps and then go back up because they wouldn't cut
Yeah,
the elevator.
I think I was on the second floor.
But and then I remember joining the ACT. I remember there was African American Congress of Tulane. That was awesome because I remember when we first got there, we went to an ACT gathering. That's when there was a pool in the UC, an indoor pool. I remember that, and then to watch it be filled and turned into a bookstore. But I remember going to that, and that was fun meeting, African Americans from all over the nation because most of the African Americans that we saw, they worked there and they were from New Orleans. So that was really cool, and to meet people outside of athletics. So we did enjoy that. But freshman year, after freshman year, I felt better about Tulane, but then I started wanting to do more and more in track, and feeling like I could play basketball. I got MVP defense freshman year, but as you know, I would steal the ball. I would
That's
steal the
okay.
ball, and as you know, I would go down. I was looking for you because I'm gonna miss it. I'm gonna miss this layup because I'm gonna shoot it with the same veracity that I'm running. And so I would always look for you. I could steal the ball all the time, but I was like, oh my god, if she's not coming down here, I'm about to miss this layup. And so usually you were on your way down because you were fast. You were on your way down to come and shoot the layup because I was like, it's gonna be a problem if I have to shoot this layup. layup. And I could touch the rim with one finger on my right hand at 5'8 3/4, but I couldn't because I didn't really play basketball until really ninth grade year. I joined the team in eighth, but my mom made me quit because of the snow. So I played ninth, 10th, and 11th. But I could rebound, I could defend anybody. And I remember Michael Jackson on Come Fly With Me, which is how I got MVP defense freshman year, watching Come Fly With Me. And he said, you play defense on someone, you own them. And I remember watching it with some other people in the dorms, and we were all crying like, "Oh my God, look at Michael! I'm gonna do that, Michael!" And that's how I got MVP defense freshman year. I said, you can only do what I let you do when you get this ball."
Right, right. You were awesome with that.
Thank you.
So I know that, you kind of adjusted. What was the adjustment like when you had a new coach come in?
The first adjustment with the new coach was I was upset because I felt like being the protester that I am, this is a breach of contract. We signed a scholarship to play for this coach. Um, it would be the same as if you were at one D1 school playing and you transfer, they make you sit out. So why isn't it the same for us? I don't know this person. She didn't recruit me, and she was much more tough than my freshman year coach, and that would be Candy Harvey. She ran a tight ship. We practiced more. Um, the running to me was the same, but it seemed as though her basketball IQ or acumen was very deep. And so we did a lot more, and we had a lot more plays. And I recall, like I told you, my senior year of high school, there was a different coach, and that coach didn't coach basketball. He just had to. And I just recall I didn't even know what a pick was until freshman. I didn't know the purpose of a pick until freshman year. I was like, this no, freshman year, but then I really realized how to pick and roll sophomore year. So I learned a lot more about the game of basketball sophomore year than I did freshman year. And the biggest difference for me was I started a lot. And all of a sudden, sophomore year, I was on the bench until pretty much the end of the game. Or if they needed someone else to stop somebody, they always put me in the game. Like I remember having to defend Pokey Chapman, whoever was the best shooter on the team, regardless of their position. I was a two guard. I always had to defend them. So I remember playing that a lot, and I didn't play. And the most devastating game, when we played the University of Memphis, the year before that, I had 12 points freshman year. I played 14 seconds. So much so when she called me to go in, I was discombobulated. I just stepped on the floor. I was like, oh, okay. So I didn't play a lot. I would say maybe the first 2 months of sophomore year. And I started, I guess, to play more. And what I attributed that to was my basketball IQ was not as in depth as other people who were in the game. And I recall her apologizing after every game. She would say, "Hey, kid, your time will come. Your time will come." And what that said to me was, "This is not about coaching. If you're apologizing to me, this is something else." Because if it's a coaching move, I just accept it. You tell me you're not playing because A, B, and C, or you're not going in. But when you apologize to me, it makes me think that you are doing something other than just keeping me out because of the game of basketball. And so,
Right.
as I was sitting on that bench many days near the end of the bench, I decided that I'm wasting my time and that I could be training, playing, running track all this time while I'm sitting here. And literally, I recall the game that I made the decision that I only wanted to run track. And it was a game, I was at the end of the bench, and I looked straight across, and it's nothing but God. I looked straight across, and I saw Coach Steele, and he was sitting in the stands talking to someone. He wasn't even. His head was turned, and I recall saying to myself, "This year, with my last year playing basketball, that's my coach over there." And I knew that with everything in me. And I told my mother, and I told her that I don't want to play basketball anymore. Number one, it was taking too much time from what I came there for, which was engineering.
Yeah, if you're investing that amount of time in it, you want to seem like what you're getting out of it is fair
Indeed.
to what your investment, your ROI.
And I recall freshman year when I got to Tulane, I had a 3.8. I had calculus, physics, chemistry, and I had a choice between Fortran and English, and I picked as an elective, and I picked English because it was always my favorite subject. And I tell my students that now: pick what you like, not what you think you can make money in. And I had a B in
A little
English.
bit of both. A little bit of both.
Yeah, because you got to eat. Yeah. And I just recall the dean of engineering told me that I could not travel. It was his second semester. I think, yeah, second semester of freshman year. He said you can't travel. Now, every other two people on the team that were freshmen, all of us had the same GPA. I won't even say what it is, but they could travel and I couldn't, and I didn't know why. Then I found out because I was in actually enrolled in the School of Engineering, and I said, well, what about track? And I recall that was my first question. I didn't ask about basketball. He said, if you bring me this cumulative GPA, but second semester, then you can run track. And I bust my behind. So I could stay. I just couldn't go to the home games, which was helpful because you would be gone and if you miss 2 days of a freshman engineering class, that's a problem.
That's a
So
problem.
I caught back up, and I love track. I'm running track, and like I said, I could always write well, and so English saved me. And I said, well, I'm going to major in English, and I can still go to law school. So that was my plan.
So, as you transition to track, how did your track acumen start increasing?
So I did not get the opportunity to tell my sophomore year coach, Coach Candy Harvey, love her also. She found out because I would always say, I would tell everybody, I'm saying, this is my last game, this is my last year. I'm not playing basketball next year. And I remember the very last game. I said, I'm not. This is it, you guys. Maybe one or two people, and of course, she found out, and she called me to her office one day, and she said, "Kid," she just called me kid, just like Coach Theo. I heard that you don't want to play basketball anymore. What's going on? And I said, well, Coach Harvey, I like basketball, but I loved. And unbeknownst to me, she had already spoken to Coach Steele, and he had already told her that I would have been All American already had I just run track. Because freshman year he made me run. He said, just run the quarter. I want you to break the school record. It was 60, and I didn't know anything about the quarter because I ran the quarter hurdles, and I ran the 300-meter hurdles in high school and the 100-meter hurdle. So I recall someone, as I was running the quarter, someone ran around to the second and said, run, Meshandra. And I said, okay. So I started running faster, and I ran a 55. And when I ran that, he said, you're going to run the quarter now. I had no idea I could run. And I recall her saying that what she was going to do was track didn't have any full scholarships. She said, I'm going to allow you to, I'm about to cry. I'm going to allow you to run track using one of my basketball scholarships. And I will never, ever forget her for that. That was so, she didn't have to do that because that could have been somebody else's scholarship. Of course, she did say senior year track would find a way to pay for it. But I was going to transfer. I'd spoken to my mom. She said, well, you can come home. You can go to University of Memphis or Memphis State at that time because she's a state employee. Or I was going to transfer to Grambling and run because I'd already spoken with them. because I could not keep up with the studies that I wanted, and being ranked 7th out of 250 coming in, and I was like, I can't do this. So my life changed when I just ran track. The sun came out. I loved it because every meet's on a Saturday. The most you might travel on a Friday. And if someone had a lab, you didn't have to get up at 5:30 in the morning like we did with basketball to suffice for two people that may have had a lab. You could run on your own. So to me, track is the perfect team sport and individual. Of course, team with the relays. But if someone couldn't be at practice at a certain time, you go run in your time. You run against the clock. And so that changed my life. It changed my perspective on Tulane. I was happy. I was smiling because I don't think I smiled that much freshman and sophomore, particularly sophomore year. I attribute the adjustment for freshman year, and I can say I was supported by my freshman year basketball coach as well, and that's how I set my first record in the long jump. Coach Matsunami told me, she was sitting at the end of the pit, and she said, "When you come down here, act like you're going up for a layup because you're coming off one foot. Think of you trying to reach the rim." And I did that on that next, and that's how I just set just the school record at that time. But she was supportive of it, and the year that I didn't play ball anymore, a couple people did the same thing. And then I recall after that, you weren't allowed to do basketball. You had to pick, and I felt bad because I was like, some
So
people,
Candy started making everybody pick after that?
yeah, you had to pick because I remember, I don't like to name people's names. Another teammate, and just she's a doctor now too, and just ran track. And there's one more person, I forget who that person was. Oh yeah, I remember. They were a year under me. Yeah, because they had been a freshman. So she changed it where you couldn't do. But I guess it's because they were quitting basketball. But she was, I guess, so you wouldn't even have that thought you couldn't. And but I do recall Candy Hari coming out to a meet, and she said that was the right thing to do for her, just to run track, because I was better at track, and not only was I better, I loved it, so it made it easy.
That's good. That's good. So you go on, you start getting all these awards and start when did you start thinking about, running overseas? Because I know that at some point you did make that move. So how did that happen?
I thought about doing that when I found out that how much you make based on the places that you get. And track is not big in the United States until the Olympics, which is awesome during the Olympics. But I thought about running overseas when I knew I could get a sponsor. And when I realized that, oh, hey, look, I'm ranked with people from Tennessee and LSU who'd won 10 national championships outdoor for girls track, and I was competing. Didn't know this till now. I used to run the quarter only during indoor season against Odell Beckham's mother, and I
Who
recall
later became the track coach at
at
Tulane?
Tulane, and I recall she used to cool down by pushing a stroller, a little umbrella stroller. I'd see Heather run around, and she'd be pushing the stroller, and I said, "Oh my God, that was Odell that was in that stroller at the time." So being exposed to actual Olympians when I would go run indoor track at LSU and outdoor, I remember indoor more because I had a semester of indoor eligibility the year after I graduated, because I played basketball for those first 2 years. And so all the other teams would ask Coach Steve, "How did she come back? She graduated." And he's like, "Yeah, she did, but she has one semester of indoor eligibility," and that's when we won the conference championship. So that's really when I started thinking about running overseas. And I met people, Olympians at LSU, who could tell me what the process was and how you become sponsored by Nike. And so, like, you could get first place in something, and you might get $100,000. Second place might be 50, or it might be 200 for first, 100 for second. And at the time, I was modeling, and they told me that would help my modeling career, because I modeled only in the summer at Tulane because it was a violation. So they were like, if you earn money, then you're no longer amateur, and if they put your picture on something and sell it, you got to pay back your scholarship money. Yeah, and I wish I were in school now where I could have, my
Right.
likeness could have been.
You'd be big NIL, big NIL.
Yes, yes. So I just used to model at home. So I just figured all of that would, and now when I see the ladies doing that, I see, and yeah. And something I didn't tell you, I protested. I forgot about that. I always wanted to live in stadium, and I
Okay.
remember you could not live there unless you were a junior or you were 21 years old. And I saw a male basketball player living there, but the problem I had, they told me that you don't pay for female athletes to stay there, because I said, well, I said I do two sports, and I see a football player that's staying there. They just said, we'll pay for you to live off campus. We don't pay for you. We'll pay for a double room, and you have to pay the difference. And my mother gave me the difference, but I said, no, it's not going down like this, because I do two, and the football team were 1-10, and I was like, no, this is not fair. So that year, and I recall saying, well, how do you pay for them and you don't pay for us? And they said, saying, I went to the assistant AD, and she said, I think it was Sandy Barber at the time. She said, Meshandra, I'm gonna be honest with you. She said, because I said this is a violation of Title IX, of course. She said, in the past it's been discrimination, but now it's financial. And so I didn't care about that. Financial. Tulane University has $1,300 to pay the difference, because there were only 3 of us on the basketball team that had been on full scholarship.
Right.
And the other 2 lived off campus. And no other sports had full scholarships, not female sports. So I was like, I'm one person. So I showed up with my money junior year. And when I got to Aaron residences, I didn't give anybody the money. I had a key for stadium place. And so thereafter, they paid for female athletes to live in state. Because I made a big deal. I told everybody I could. And I remember going to accounts receivable, telling them this is not fair. And so they paid for it. And they paid for it for everyone
Excellent.
else thereafter. I forgot about that.
Excellent.
That was one of my protest marching times.
Yeah, we got to know who set the tones out here.
Yeah,
What was
like, why do
going
you get to
down?
live
That's
here?
important.
It is.
Yes.
And then when I
That's
won the
awesome.
Sophie B. Newcomb Scholar Athlete Award, that was awesome. I think that was my senior year, maybe. So I was glad that I was back to doing what I do academically. Once I was only running track. But yeah, running
That's
overseas,
awesome.
that's what sparked all of that. That I loved. This is how I could get paid running track, and merge that with modeling, and open more doors. Then I broke my finger.
Did you make it on any magazines once you got over there?
I made it in magazines. No, I didn't make it on. That was USA Track and Field '94. Jackie Jonah Kersey was ranked 1, and someone told me. I was walking somewhere, and this guy said, "Meshandra, did you know that you were ranked 8th in USA Track and Field?" I was like, "No." So it's the April '94 edition of USA Track and Field, and I found my name, and I found the world leader, and then Jackie Jonah Kersey, and it was actually 7 these years. I thought it was 8 because I counted Jackie,
Right.
and she wasn't counted, so it's really 7th. And I looked down at the list, and I like lost it when I saw Mashandra Hall and in parentheses Tulane. But at the time, I had broken my femur, and I actually pulled all the muscles in my right foot at LSU, and I had jumped to 21 feet. I landed there. I was going fast enough to land there, and all the pain went to my leg, then my foot, and I was on crutches. I pulled every muscle in my right foot, so I didn't even know that I had a stress fracture in my femur because I couldn't run. And then once I was healed enough to run again for NCs, I started running. This was for NCAA indoor finals, so I qualified, but I hurt myself at the last chance because you don't know you qualified until I had already qualified and didn't know it. January 29th. And unfortunately, that same day that I got that injury, when I got home back from LSU, my mother called me. She called earlier. She called at 6 a.m. and told me my father passed that same day that I
Oh
was running. And
wow.
I recall thinking about my family specifically on the drive up there. I was like, oh my God, if something happens to my dad, I will be sad. That's how I know God works. And the same day, my dad passed. But anyway, healed up my foot and didn't realize I had the fracture. So every time I would run, I would literally fall off the balls of my feet because I would get a
Wow.
shooting pain in my right femur. Went to the doctor, and they said that's because you have to stay off of that for 6 months. So I did, and I started back training, and I was going to have to switch to the 800 because
Yeah,
it's,
because you
yeah,
can't really land on that anymore.
you can't. Well, they told me you can land on it, but you won't jump again because you'll snap it. So I said, well, and one would heal shorter than it. So I was like, well, nope, don't want to do that. So that was the end of that. And I tell all my students, but guess what? I had a degree. So I said, that's the be all end all, because as an athlete, you are always one injury away from ending your career. But it was because I jumped in my sprint shoes. I didn't jump in jump shoes.
So how was your mental health transitioning through that time?
Horrible. It was absolutely horrible. And I was married once I eventually stopped running, and I recall I was unhappy a lot. And I recall my husband saying to me at the time, "I think the reason that you're unhappy is because you can't run track anymore." And I had never thought about why I was feeling dissatisfied, depressed. And when he said it, it was like a light bulb. I would have thought I would have known that, and it was like a light bulb. And I was like, "Oh my, that is exactly why I feel the same way I would assume when people retire from NBA, NFL, or anything you've done since you were 9 years old, and now you're in your 30s. Really, really, right before that, maybe like 28, because I still ran sub masters, never ran masters, and I was like, wow, this is why I've been sad and I've been depressed. So initially, my ex husband started training me, and I'd run, and I'd say the way he coaches is different than Coach Steele. So I'd say, you can't tell me that. You got to say, come on, kid, you can do it. I sound just like Coach Steele. I said, Coach Steele wasn't a berater; he was an encourager. So you got to talk to me that way. I don't do well when may use foul language or fuss or yell at me. I don't operate. And so he tried that. Then eventually I realized, hey, it's over. Do you want to be running
Right.
track anymore? And so I
Right.
started coaching after that. And then I
Mm.
stopped coaching because I couldn't do it with people not working hard, because I always expected to work as hard as I worked. And I think that's part of having been an elite athlete. And when an elite athlete,
Exactly.
it is hard to coach because the expectations are just too much. And
Yeah,
even though I didn't think that,
you have to adjust down from, everybody's not elite. So it's like, okay, you know, will you work hard?
and
So
that they
for
wouldn't.
me,
Hmm.
that's the thing. I can help you if you're gonna work hard,
But they would
and
not
we
commit.
will achieve something.
Hmm.
Now, what that is up to you. But if you're not working hard, to me, you're wasting my time.
You're wasting my time. And so I tell them that, well, coaching track, which you never have to cut anybody's track. People always cut them. So I've never had to say, hey, you made it, you didn't. Never, never been a problem, because when I'm like, well, what did you think? This is track. Well, we run too much. Well, it's track. That's what you do in track. You run, you run. Well, I'm tired. I said, you're always going to be tired when you're running, because your fun time is the meet, and they only practice an hour. And I'm like, that's what we practice. I run 4 quarters every Monday, maybe in five, with 4 minutes rest under 60. So it doesn't take that long to work out. The long part
Right.
is you trying to get extra time resting. But I have a good core group. I did last year, and I see a young lady who was in the ninth grade who played basketball, got MVP all
Okay.
district and for the team. Although the team really wasn't that great, she's good, and she was ranked in conference for track in the 100 and 200. So
Great.
I'm happy. I'm happy of that. And I tell them, I can't save everybody, but I can guarantee you, if you work hard, somebody will give you some money to go to school.
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So we get to school. We've been overseas. We transitioning into our life after. What kind of helped you? I know you talked to your husband, and he kind of told you it had a lot to do with track. Did you have anyone else to talk to? Anyone else that just kind of helped you transition from athlete to your next stage of life?
I did. I spoke with Coach Steele. And what we spoke about was, I recall telling you that when we won conference 94, and I spoke with my pastor, but I just recall Coach Steele was the head coach there forever. And after we won indoor conference, and I'm gonna put her name out there, Tracy Harris, and I, because she went to nationals in the triple jump the same time I went in the long, and we were the first two female athletes to win. I mean, to go to NCAAs, and the girls track team, we were the first on campus to win a conference championship. And they don't have that in the records right now. So Cassandra told me yesterday, I'm calling because I have my conference. They start with 96 listing conference championships. And like, nope, nope, nope.
Really?
This was 94, and ours will stand forever because there's not any more in Metro. Metro Conference stopped at the end of our senior year, and it's not in the books, but it will be when we.
We need to work on that. So
Yes.
let's work
So
on that. We can get that done. We can
yes,
get that done.
because we
Let's
were like,
work
we
on that.
worked too hard on that, and we lost the
Yeah.
outdoor year before by 1 point.
Yeah,
Um,
let's work on that.
Yes, but talking with Coach Steele, and he spoke about, what he was doing after coaching track. He went back into education, which he'd done before, and he was able to do it. And I knew that if he was able to do it, I knew that I could let it go, but also think about the other things I'm good at. Because, like I said, I loved writing, and I had a degree in English, so that helped me transition a lot to being able to help young people academically. So for a while, I didn't really think about track. I thought about putting that same quote elite effort into my academics. So I got a 4.0 on my master's at Xavier. I said, okay, that's good. Let me start my PhD now. And I'm ABD, all but dissertation at UNO with a 3.8. So I just refocused my energy, and that took up until I would say 2000. That
Okay.
took about 4 years, 4 to 5 years after, where my focus became academics and excelling in my job and anything else I do. Um, the same way I did with track. So I finished that master's, and at the age of 28, I became an assistant principal at the Sarah T. Reed High School, the second largest high
Oh.
school in Orleans Parish at the time. And
Ooh.
I was over disciplined, and then yes, I used to chase kids down the hallway, and they were like, "Oh, Miss Hall is fast," or Miss Jackson, whoever. I think I was Miss Jackson then, but I'm back Miss Hall now. I've been Miss Hall for like 17 years now. But anyway, yeah, I would chase them down the hallway, and they look back and say, "Oh my gosh, she's close." Um, so I did that, and then 3 years after that, I was asked to take a job in human resources, and I staffed all the high schools. And the way they noticed, I only applied for a summer job, and the director of human resources, finally, I found out, her secretary told me, she saw your cover letter, and she said she's smart. Put her down to call to interview for the human resources job to staff the high school, because you could not do that unless you had been a school site administrator first. And like I said, I'd been assistant principal at Reed. I did that for 3 years, and then I went to HR, and then Katrina hit, and I went back to HR. A consulting company who took over New Orleans Public Schools called me back, and so basically I just started to shift my focus to what was happening now, which was my job, and then I helped open the first charter organization in Orleans Parish, which was Algiers Charter School, and
Okay.
I was they called after the storm. Alvarez and Marsal called back 12 employees from central office, and I was one of those 12 in HR. And then they left New Orleans Public Schools, and they were charged to open Algiers Charter Schools, which were only the schools for Orleans Parish that weren't flooded. And so I stayed in human resources there, and we had 90 employees on my laptop. My laptop was the program, basically, and creating salary schedules. And then eventually I decided, hey, I'm going to go back to school, because I just made the salary schedule, and you make more now being an AP than you did when we were New Orleans Public, and more than what I made in human resources. And I miss the kids being there, because they remind me of why you do. So I went to
Right.
Edna Carr
Right.
as assistant principal over curriculum when we switched
Okay.
9 to 12. So since then, I've been in education, and I returned home to Memphis. I was in New Orleans I lived in Virginia for a year. I coached at Virginia State University. At the same time, my husband coached at Virginia State, but I taught in the daytime for Richmond Public School. And then I would go assistant coach at at Virginia State. And ironically, the way I got that job, the team who beat us, they knew that there was a discrepancy, and we really should have won outdoor championship. And she told us that in '93, by 1 point. She was the track coach and the athletic director at Virginia Commonwealth University at that time.
Okay.
Well, at Virginia, she was now the athletic director at Virginia State, which was only 3 years after I was at the VSU and in Virginia. And she said, "I remember you. Of course, I want you to help coach." That's how I got that job as an assistant coach there. Then we went back. We moved back to New Orleans, so I was there until 18.
Gotcha.
Worked
So how's
everywhere.
everything? How's everything going in Memphis?
Memphis is not the Memphis that I left. We used to get City Beautiful every year, and we right now have the highest violent crime rate in the United States.
Really?
Yes, and I tell people, I recall New Orleans, especially in the 90s, 94, 95, when I first started teaching, and I was at Sarah T. Reed. I had attempted murderers in my classroom, but they were respectful. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, and they didn't play. But I recall, telling several people here that New Orleans had the highest murder rate, but typically it was related to drugs, which the city coroner told me that and my ex-husband, and they didn't miss. But here it's anybody and everybody. At a gas station, we've had 2 pastors killed, carjacked. For the first time ever in life, my car was stolen last year. Yeah,
Wow.
I didn't know that an Infinity was the most stolen car here. I walked out of a store at broad daylight at 4:30 in the afternoon in the handicap spot because I had a boot on my foot, and my car was gone. I was like, I know I'm 75 feet from the front door. Where's my car? It was gone. So, but
Oh,
anyway,
wow.
I love being with my family. I moved back
Yeah.
November of 18, and I went to a school where that gentleman I was telling you about who coached us senior year, Mr. James Q. Backer Sr. He was principal. He had been superintendent for Hattiesburg Public Schools, and he'd come
Hmm.
back to Memphis, and he was the principal of the school. Where I was able to get a job right away
Okay.
as a instructional facilitator at that time, teaching English. But I love it. I just don't like my salary. I'm not in admin. I was in admin. I have 21 years of admin experience, and so I went
Hmm.
back to the classroom when my mother passed.
Okay.
January of 22. Um, I resigned on I was a principal at a charter school here, middle school. Um, what is it? Power Center Academy. And I went in on my mother's birthday was on January 2nd on a Sunday. I didn't feel like she was being taken the greatest care of by her caretaker at that time. So I resigned on January 3rd, and I said, "Hey, look, I need to take care of my mom. That's why I'm back here." So I resigned, and January 3rd, 4th, she passed away the next day.
Hmm.
So I just didn't do anything for 7 months. I was like, I'm done. I don't want to go into school because my mother was an educator and she was a retired principal. And so I didn't
Okay.
know if I would even be able to walk into a school without bursting. And so I didn't do anything for 7 months. And it was hard to get back in admin because I don't know anybody here. I know everybody there in New Orleans. They know Mash. Where's Mash? Um, but I just started teaching. I teach English and I teach English to ESL students. I'm not an ESL teacher. I teach traditional English, but I do speak Spanish because I took 3 years in high school and 3 semesters at Tulane. And I
Okay.
forgot that I could speak Spanish, and I was like, "Oh, okay." So I had the highest test scores my first year back in the classroom, 22,
Awesome.
23. So I was excited about that. And I taught last year. I taught 10th grade English last year, a year before last, and ninth grade this past year. I don't know what I'm going to teach. He said, "You will be teaching English. I just can't tell you what grade." And I'm still applying for admin jobs here. It'll happen whenever.
Of course. Of course. All right. Well, that sounds great. We're coming to kind of getting close to the ends. I just want to hit you with a few quick questions to learn about Mashandra.
Okay.
Now you got to answer the first thing comes to your head, okay?
Oh, wow. Okay.
All right. Do you like to bike or hike?
Oh, I probably have to say hike because I haven't been on a bike in forever. I got to say hike.
What's most important, book smarts or street smarts?
Street smarts right now where I am in Memphis.
Do you want to score or defend?
Defend always.
Work? Work or workout?
Workout.
You want to sing karaoke or go to a movie?
Sing karaoke.
What's your
Tina
go-to
Turner.
karaoke song?
Rolling. Proud Mary. I've done it
Really?
twice. I did it in New
Oh
Orleans
my
with my
gosh.
principal, and I did it last year. Last year and the year before last, when we had faculty day. I dressed up as Tina Turner, and I like because it says Memphis and New Orleans in the
That's awesome. Board games or video games?
um board games,
Reading or writing?
writing,
Planning or spontaneity?
spontaneity because I'm a Gemini.
Okay. What's a TV show you used to watch when you were in college?
A different world, baby. A different world in the college show, but more a different world.
Are you watching anything now?
Yeah, I watch YouTube most days, but I watch The Shy and oh my god, so much a show called Harlem. And I watch every morning. I watch Living Single, even
Okay.
though I know my sister says you know every episode and every word. I
I
do
do
not.
the same thing.
I do. I love it. I know every, and I can watch it over and over again like it's brand new, although I know exactly what's gonna happen. And I just love cutting it on in the morning when I'm getting dressed for
What was the best concert you attended? We talked about that, huh?
New Edition, my junior year, and I never got a chance to go to see Prince, but that would have been had I gone. But New Edition.
Ooh. I got a chance to go see Prince at Essence. It was
Oh,
on
don't tell me.
fire. Where
Don't tell
were
me
you?
because the year that he made everyone wear purple and they put the purple lights on the dome, I
Yes.
was driving back from Slidell and it was 16. That was in 16. And I said, I'm going to the Prince concert next year. And he
Oh
passed.
my
Because
goodness.
that was definitely, if it wasn't 16, it was 16. But I think it was July of 2016.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh my God, that has been that in Whitney Houston, but more Prince." I know where I was at that moment when they said that's my favorite musical artist of all time.
Yes, indeed. Um, What are some things that your teachers used to say about you on your report cards when you were younger?
Meshandra talks a lot. I used to get N's in conduct, but it's because I was an only child, so I had to get all my words out at school. So yeah, I used to get N's. In high school, everything was cool, but when I was younger, I used to get N's in conduct, and sometimes I would take children's snack food out of their lunch. Like that was like when I was like in the first grade, second grade, because my mom didn't buy a lot of, which is probably why I ended up with 12% body fat in college, because I didn't eat sugar for the most part. Yeah, that. But I always got N's in conduct. Mashandra talks too much. Mashandra talks too much. I just get the end. Needs to improve.
Would you rather go back in time and meet your ancestors or go forward in time and meet your descendants?
I would like to go back and meet my ancestors.
Okay. And if your life was a movie, what would be the title and who do you want to play the leading role?
Well, when I played the sorority, I was line president of 94 of us online, and they said because we mine was Devil Wears Prada because they said I was Glenn Close. With the way I dressed and not necessarily all her attitude, but that's what they picked. So I can't say that. So that must be how they view me. So I picked what they picked. But if I had to pick one for myself, that one just sticks on me because I can't think. I love TV. Like I love so many movies. The only other thing I love more, I love Love Jones. That's my favorite movie of all
Okay.
time. Love Jones. So I could watch that over and over again. But they said The Devil Wears Prada, so
What actress would you want to play your part?
the same one who played it then, Glenn Close. Or really, I would want Megan Good to play that.
Can she run track?
I don't know. Oh, if it was a
She'll
movie
have
on my
to
life,
learn.
if it
She'll
was
have,
a movie.
yeah, movie on your life.
If it was a movie for my life,
Anybody stand out, you say, oh, yeah, they could, they remind me of me.
I would say
Nobody?
not that remind who. Well, the girl who was on what is her name? It escapes me, but she used to be. They used to always tell me this who I look like. The girl on the Cedric the Entertainer, Levita, who used to go
Oh,
Sadie
okay.
when I had that haircut, and then I was, everyone in New Orleans called me country. And now everyone here says I sound like New Orleans, so I guess I'm somewhere across in between.
Really?
When I say certain words, I
You
get
don't sound, you don't say as much, you don't sound as much like Memphis as you used to.
right because I'm across. I'm middle at
Yeah, yeah,
middle
yeah,
mark
yeah,
nation.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
You're cultured now. You've
oh,
been
okay.
around.
Yes, I know it's a bear and Burgundy now. But I can't
That's
her. I don't know her
awesome.
name. I forget her name. Either Megan Good or I don't know why her name escapes me.
Because we haven't seen her name a lot.
Yeah, and I would have said Gabrielle Union, but I don't like her attitude, and
Great.
so I would think people would go and be like, we don't like it. And she said she was a mean girl, and she said that in real
You're
life.
not a mean girl. You're not a mean girl. You're a
Mhm.
make it happen girl.
Yeah, I learned that from Martha J. Tipton, my mother.
Awesome. Is there anything we need to cover? Anything you want to throw out there? You feel like we hit on everything?
I think we did hit on everything. Then one last thing I'm gonna throw out. There's a young lady, and I walked into this eatery. I can't think of the name of it. It's I think Chicken Salad Chicks, and there's a young girl there, and I had on my Tulane lanyard, and she said, young African American girl, and she said, "Did you attend Tulane?" And I told her yes. She said, "I'm going there in the fall, which is this fall coming up now." And I asked her for her name and number, and it's in my phone, and I will pass it to you. And I
Okay.
saw her that day. I talked about it. I said, "Hey, I know there's so many people in New Orleans and people that are affiliated with Tulane, like yourself and the DA, Jason Williams, all those good people." And the first time we didn't exchange numbers, and so 2 days later I went back. I wanted to make sure she was on shift, and I told her to make sure she signs up to be a part of African American Congress of Tulane, and that she needs to reach out to Carolyn Barber, who now has a building named after her. And so she said she
Exactly.
would certainly do that. So just only thing I can leave with is you don't know when you have an impact on children and you inspire them, but you do it as an educator and just in general. Like that young lady didn't know me, but she felt comfortable enough to ask me. And I think right now in our society, people are so closed off. What's wrong with a smile or telling a stranger hello? Do that because
Right.
that's just do it just because it's the right thing to do, and you never know who you're impacting, or maybe who's had a bad day, or they just need you to smile at them. Even the people at the red light. Yeah, you might do something else with this money, but I'm giving it to you in hopes that I really believe this is what you're gonna do with. But just that, you know, be real with people, and I do believe that there is a there is a God, and there's a couple places you can go, and I want to go to the right place
Yes,
at
indeed.
the end of it all, and just inspire young people. Put yourself around young people. They keep you young, but you don't really know it. But you inspire them just by your mere presence. And my students tell me that all the time. Miss Hall, I was told the same thing in New Orleans and the same thing here from children way back when I was at Edna Carr in 2007 till last school year, and I was blown away when they used the exact same words. They said, Miss Hall, we like you because you're strict fun. Your class is strict fun. You make us follow the
Yes,
rules and we have
indeed.
fun. And I was like, I like that. I like that. Strict
All
fun.
right, Miss Strict Fun. I like that too.
Yep. Hmm. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thanks again for just having a little tea talk with me.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll come back around to it. It was great having you on,
Thank you.
and I wish you all the best in your upcoming ventures. And I will see you in a couple of weeks, girl.
Yes. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you for having me. Miss you.